Hi, we have another question on 9.3, geometric sequences, problem number 74. And what we're trying to do in this problem is find the infinite sum. Now I want you guys to recall that on infinite sums, there is a formula that will find infinite sums. And the idea is to add up all the numbers in a list, but the list continually grows. In other words, there is no last term like the partial sums are. The partial sums has a last term. The ellipses at the very end of this guarantees me that this thing goes on and on and on. So that's an infinite geometric series in this case. So it's S equals A sub 1 over 1 minus R. You have to know the formulas. If you don't know the formulas, you can't do the problem. Now, in order for this formula to work, R has to be between -1 and +1. And that might create an issue here. I'm just looking at the problem here. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's growing. 9 plus 12, that's 21. 21 plus 16, we're up to like 37. And the thing is, the numbers are getting bigger as it progresses. So that kind of tells me something. R, remember, can be found by taking the second term divided by the first term. And that'd be 12 divided by 9. And that's a problem. 12 divided by 9, it's not a problem that you can't figure out what that is. The problem is you can't use the formula for this one because, remember, R has to be between -1 and +1. So right away I can tell 12 ninths is more than 1. It's actually, 4/3, which is 1.3 repeating. So therefore you cannot use this formula. And you're thinking, well, then how do you find the sum? You can't. When the R doesn't fall between -1 and +1, it's what we call a divergent series, meaning the sum gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But you can look at the problem without knowing any of that, and it's kind of obvious to you because the next number after the 16 would be, well, if it's 4/3, you would have to take 16 times 4/3, which I believe is 64/3. And that's even bigger than 16. So, and I think 64/3 was actually on the list in the book. So, but anyway, so these are the first 4 terms. But every time you put another term down, it gets bigger than the one before. And that's the problem. So in order for these to work, R has to be between -1 and +1. So a lot of people think when they get this and they get R as 4/3, they leave it blank. They say, well, I can't do it. And then they leave it blank. And then they lose points. Well, you can't just leave it blank. You got to tell me what's going on. So, sure, the formula doesn't work. But that doesn't give you the opportunity to say, oh, I can't do it, so I'll just leave it blank. You got to tell me that that is a divergent series. And what a divergent series is, it's just a series that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's what we call without bound. So, it's not a convergent series, if you will. So the sum keeps getting larger. So every time you add the next number on the list, the sum gets bigger. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It doesn't level off, if you will. So, but anyway, so you're like, what do I do then? Well, what you need to do here is just say, tell me divergent series. And some people tell me, they'll say, well, the sum does not exist. And I kind of look the other way when you tell me that. I know what you mean. It's not really technically right, but it's okay. The sum doesn't exist. And some people will say that, and I say, okay, fine, that's fine. But what you should write down is a divergent series. So you can't just blindly go through this and put the numbers into the formula. As a matter of fact, if you try to use the formula here, you would get the first term, which is 9 over 1 minus R, which is 4/3. So you get 9 divided by, and then 1 take away 4/3 is a -1/3. And if you do the math, it's -27. So if you actually try to use the calculator, you get -27. And some people just don't pay attention. They get the answer of -27, and they say, oh, that looks good enough to me. But it doesn't even make sense. -27 is the sum when you add these numbers up, and the numbers are getting bigger every time. There's not even one negative number in the list. So how can the sum be a -27? It doesn't even make sense. So make sure when you get these things and you get an answer that doesn't make sense, go back and look at your R and see what the R is, and see if the R is between -1 and +1. And if it's not, that's your problem. So if it is, then you probably made a mistake along the way. So, but anyway, this is 9.3, number 74.